We invited back to the scoreboard Congresswoman Michele Bachmann, Republican from Minnesota. Michele Bachmann, thank you so much for coming in. Good to see you.
David, good to see you again, too.
So with all the money that they've spent, the administration prodding on Congress, literally over $1 trillion, they're still not finished. They still had to call you back for more. Do they believe at all in the powers of the market to heal itself?
No, not at all, David. That's the problem. They've spent $3.6 trillion in stimulus. So for Speaker Pelosi to bring us back to spend an additional $26 billion, which to you and me is a lot of money, but to them it doesn't rise to the level of a day at the beach. So for them to bring us back to spend this money, you got to wonder why they're doing it. And then we find out it's all about a cash for Democrat re-election campaign. That's the goal. So if it wasn't outrageous enough, now they want to have the taxpayers essentially fund their re-election efforts, and that's what this is, because quite literally what will happen is this money is going to be shifted over to public employee unions. The unions will skim off the top. They'll put a good portion of that into political action committees. And this isn't Michele Bachmann. This is the newspapers yesterday in Washington, D.C. saying this, quoting all the unions, AFL-CIO, AFSCME, SEIU, saying, yep, now that we've gotten our money, now we're going to get up off the couch. We're going to start campaigning for all the people who voted for us to have this money and against all the people who voted against it. So quite clearly, this is a cash for Democrat re-election program.
So how much the unions have calculated their percentage, their cut, if you will, of the $10 billion that's going to teachers?
Yes, to the teachers, but also the $16 billion that goes to Medicaid. That's right. Fungible money, David, so that can be spent in any way they want, and quite literally it will go to public employee unions, and that's a very hefty cut then that will go to finance these re-election campaigns. It's outrageous.
By the way, the $16 billion that's going for Medicaid payments, to state Medicaid payments, I'm wondering how much of that is as a result of Obamacare.
Well, of course, because Obamacare mandates all of these increases in Medicaid spending, and concomitantly, the Obama administration prohibited states from cutting back on Medicaid. So states were put in a catch-22. So now here you have a bailout where the federal government is bailing out the state and local politicians. So we have federal politicians giving tax money to state and local politicians who couldn't balance their budget. But really what's going to happen is this money will slide over to public employees. Again, the unions will take their cut. And all that money, which is a lot of money, will go in to re-elect Speaker Pelosi and her Democrat majority.
Well, Congresswoman, you know, the administration, there's some smart people. They know how to read the figures. Today we got reports of the non-farm productivity. The GDP is falling for the first time in 5 quarters. Second quarter of this year, it fell almost a full percentage point. If a lot more of those happen, or a couple more of those happen, we're in a double-dip recession. What do they have planned? They know that they need to get cash out into the marketplace. The Federal Reserve isn't helping them. These stimulus policies aren't helping them in terms of getting the banks to lend money, or at least giving them something to put their money into. Do you think there is another plan to maybe force the hand of the banks somehow to lend money?
That wouldn't surprise me through the regulatory effort, but remember, not all the monies are yet let through the stimulus program. There's still a lot of money that they can unleash on the economy. I fully expect that they plan to do that in the next 12 weeks before the election, but the American people have read through these tea leaves. They are upset. They're fed up. I think in some ways the die is cast. And I think that if people get to the polls, it's going to be a very bad night for Democrats on the first Tuesday of November.
Now, the president, keeping with the bank ideas for a second, the president has suggested something called a national infrastructure bank. I'm not sure exactly how it would be funded, how it would be used, whether he would have the discretion to have input or Congress would be making loans. That idea strikes me, as somebody who used to cover Latin America, as a sort of banana republic deal. Does that have any support inside of Congress?
Well, it may have support in some quarters, certainly with the liberal Democrat majority under Speaker Pelosi, not at all under the Republicans. But haven't we seen that so far under President Obama? His policies have been one that have resembled banana republic policies. And when we see that the federal government has come in and quite literally taken over one private industry after another, and to the point of taking over entire industries such as the student loan industry or Fannie and Freddie, or the fact that almost 70% of all home loans today are being underwritten by the federal government, this is the kind of moves that we'll continue to see, because the administration is nothing if not consistent.
Well, you mentioned Fannie and Freddie. Those two institutions, we own about 80% of them right now. We're on the hook. Taxpayers are. They are bleeding billions and billions of dollars. According to the New York Times, they've already bled $145 billion in some of the mortgages that they hold going bankrupt, going into foreclosure. It could add up to $400 billion. And now, this is extraordinary, some of the houses that Fannie and Freddie had the mortgages on, they're being resold to nonprofits that are using grant money from federal taxpayer dollars. So in other words, the cycle is continuing again. We're not only foreclosing on those properties, but putting them back in the hands of people who can't afford them.
Well, and David, I imagine that doesn't shock you. It doesn't shock me, because I had taken a look at the financial reg reform bill, and unfortunately there was very little reg reform. All that bill did is institutionalize all of the widgets and ratchets that got us into the situation that we're in today. Freddie and Fannie is a sinking ship, and it's going to continue to go down as long as the taxpayer money continues to pour into it.
So what should we do? Michele Bachmann, I got to ask, because Democrats always say, well, you're the party of no, you're always pointing out what's wrong. What is right? What should we do to make it right?
I wish we could have turned back the clock and put Fannie and Freddie into receivership from the beginning as opposed to conservatorship. We had bankruptcy laws and courts for a reason. Bankruptcy actually works. It brings about a sting and a rebuke to the marketplace, and it brings about discipline in the marketplace. We need to get back to allowing large businesses, small businesses, if they fail, they fail. And it's a shame, but it's important, I think, in this case, that Fannie and Freddie also have to get their house in order. They certainly aren't now. They're certainly continuing to make loans under the same bad, poor circumstances. And so, in my opinion, they need to go into a receivership. And rather than enhancing the loan limits, we need to continually ratcheting down the loan limits. And I would like to see Fannie and Freddie at some point just out and out sold, and let the private market come in and be the new secondary mortgage market.
It's amazing that it's become a novel idea to allow an institution to fail in our free market. Michele Bachmann, we got to leave it at that. Michele, thank you very much for being here.